Well, why don't we get started? I want to welcome everyone to the virtual world of the Eastside Freedom Library and this special discussion tonight about the premiere of the play Atacama by Full Circle Theater. It will open officially April 21 at Park Square Theater in downtown St. Paul. There will be a preview on the 20th of April. This is a project by our friends at the Full Circle Theater. Full Circle is their statement of purpose, multiracial and multicultural in their representation of life, deeply inclusive of artists of color who share in the artistic vision and leadership of the company. They demonstrate a deep awareness of feminist perspectives, climate change, and the inclusion of artists of all abilities. They incorporate intergenerational artistic collaboration. They incorporate color-conscious casting and diversity in the creative process. They support the development of emerging theater artists, and they powerfully engage diverse audiences and communities. Tonight is part of that engagement. We've been delighted to work with them several times in the past at the Eastside Freedom Library. And I'm going to turn the spotlight over to Rick Shiomi, who is the co-artistic director of Full Circle. And he's going to explain what's going to happen tonight. Well, let me just mention, we ask you to keep your microphones muted if you're in the audience. We're going to have a discussion among the artists, and then we're going to open to the audience for questions posed in the chat, and I will be tracking and communicating those questions. We're also recording tonight's conversation, and there will be a recording available for people who are unable to join us tonight. So let me turn things over to Rick Shiomi.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the Eastside Freedom Library for producing this podcast. Just for myself, my name is Rick Shiomi, and I am the co-artistic director of Full Circle Theater Company. We've been together for about 6.5, 7 years now. In a previous theater company called Theater Moo, I was the artistic director there for about 20 years. So I've been involved in this community for almost 30 years now, and really excited about it. So I'd like to pass it on to Augusto.
Hi, how's everyone doing? My name is Augusto Federico Amador. I am the playwright. My namesake is, just to clarify, my namesake is not General Augusto Pinochet. It's after my father, Augusto Arturo Amador. So that's a mouthful in itself. The play itself, well, first of all, I just really wanted to thank the dramaturg. Special thanks to the dramaturg, Stephanie Walseth, and then of course, Eva Zuniga, who was the Chilean kind of consultant to keeping it as authentic as possible. And then of course, thanks to the Full Circle Theater for, it's been quite a journey before, getting ready to happen before COVID, and it didn't. And and I feel unbelievably fortunate because a lot of my fellow playwrights, their plays never came back and aren't coming back. So I was really fortunate, and all my respect and affection to, Rick and the Full Circle and everybody for having faith in the play and sticking with it and bringing it back. So I would like to just state that right out front. So Atacama is part of my Dictator play trilogy. The first being called Kissing Che, which was developed at my time as a playwriting fellow at the Public Theater in New York. And that had to do with the rise and fall of Havana's last famous drag queen during the persecution of homosexuals by the Castro regime. And the second is called the Book of Leonidas, which is about Trujillo and about a father and son who escape it, and then how it follows them into 1970s New York. And then Atacama is about Pinochet and the persecution happening with that. So I don't know how we want to begin with this or.
Yeah, no, we'll come back and have you explain more about it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Pedro. Just an introduction.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Pedro Bayon. I am an actor in the Twin Cities, originally from Puerto Rico. I am playing Diego in this wonderful Atacama production. I will pass it to Lara Trujillo.
I am Lara Trujillo. Pretty sure no relation to
Trujillo.
your other play in the trilogy there, Augusto. Yes, I'm also an actor in the Twin Cities here for many years, moving to Minnesota after college. So I'm originally from Colorado, and my father's family was there when it was part of Mexico. So we didn't emigrate, it just moved the borders on them. So I in this particular production, I'm serving as a director, co-director with Rick, and I'm also an actor. I'm playing Ignacia. And also for Full Circle Theater itself, I am very blessed to be one of the Full Circle core artist members, founding members, along with Rick and Martha and Stephanie. So.
Great, thank you. And since I personally can see 3 other people involved in this Zoom, I'd like to actually ask them to introduce themselves. To begin with Martha Johnson, Martha B. Johnson, and your role. How have you been involved?
Hello. Yes, so I am the co-artistic director of the company, and one of the I'm a member of the core artist leadership group, and also definitely one of the founders of this company. And so at a certain point, I was going to be partnering with Lara to direct the show back in 2019. So I was deeply involved in the play and did a lot of research and fell in love with the play, of course, and was very, very tied to the play. And then COVID hit, and that was the end of that. And then it really seemed much better that Rick would take this over. So I'm concentrating on a different project right now. But so it's very close to my heart, even though right now I'm a little bit more peripheral in terms of this production. So thank you.
Okay. And Quincy?
Yeah, hi, I'm Quincy, and for this project, I am the sound designer, but I also do a bunch of other things at Full Circle, from marketing to our website and other general admin, anything that Rick and Martha need help with at the company.
And Quincy and Lara are both coming to us from the Atacama Desert, I think. That's, and finally, Gordon. Since I can see you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Gordon Nakagawa. I'm a member of the board of directors for Full Circle Theater for the past 3 years or so. And I've been a big fan of the work that Rick and Martha have done previously, and a great believer in the mission of this organization. I had the opportunity to see the reading at Eastside Freedom Library when it was done a couple of years ago, and I was utterly blown away. My wife and I were both there. We were completely knocked out by the reading alone. The language, Augusto, was just overwhelmingly beautiful and provocative and powerful. And we're just completely knocked out by it. And I'm so looking forward to the actual staged production. It's been a great opportunity to be part of Full Circle, and I'm a pest, and I like to hang around as much as possible in the wings.
Great. Great. Thank you so much, Gordon. Wonderful person on our board and wonderful person to be involved in our productions. I do want to do a little description of the play itself, just to give a sense for anyone who's not familiar with it. Atacama is a play of magical realism and profound reconciliation. Amidst the extraordinary landscape of Chile's Atacama Desert, 2 strangers search for the long-lost remains of their children. disappeared victims of the brutal Pinochet regime. In their quest for closure, they traversed Chile's history to examine the opposing views and actions that tore families and countries apart. The mythic journey explores the transformative possibilities that can lead from transgression to remorse, reparations, forgiveness, and ultimately redemption. And so it's a two-character play, and these two characters really go through an intense journey together. And so my first question to Augusto is basically, what inspired you to write this play, and what was the process for you in the creation, if you want to discuss a bit about that?
I did some research just on the desert itself, and the idea about these women who be coming for 30 years, we're coming to the desert and we're actually excavating they're trying to find the bones of their loved ones. And that, some of them just have just like a hand of their son or daughter or husband or wife. And to me, it was really amazing that how they were only women doing it, because, at that time it's extra macho, right? And men were thought that was kind of beneath them, which was, of course, a sign of the times, because, Pinochet, as in the character Diego, because one of the things is what is masculinity, and especially what is Latino machismo. I know those, and I'm sure Pedro and Laura, know. I think a lot of ethnicities really know those kind of men, right? In some way or another. But so my thing is that if I'm going to write a two-hander, and I was really interested in writing a two-hander because it's so hard. Yeah, sure. It's so a lot of people think it's easier because it's like 70 pages or whatever, but it's harder because you don't have you can't just have these characters pop in, pop out, and change things. Do you know what I mean? So it becomes really intense. So you really have to kind of like, in the end, when you go back to it, structure it really, really well, so it doesn't meander, right? And it builds upon each other. I think the obvious way to have written this play is Ignacia is the 100% victim, and Diego is the 100% devil, right? All right, the bad guy, 100%. But to me, it was like, I only wrote this because, without giving anything away to the other people that haven't seen it yet, is that Ignacia has to learn something from him. And I know that's kind of outrageous thing to say, because, how is it that this woman can learn something from someone that has a monster? Like, what does he have to offer her? And so once I found what that was, to me, it was then creating all the extra layers in the mystery, which I don't want to get into. Or not, or if you think I should, I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
No, okay. Better. Let's keep a secret.
Let's keep a secret, right? So to me, it was, and in doing so, right, but to me, it's like everything else is, was to make it as gray as possible, because I think that that's what makes people relatable. Maybe not as bad as that, but I think that making people that are, just because someone is a victim of a crime doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes and don't do selfish things or whatnot. And I think it's important to really layer that in. And in doing so, I feel like I've kind of, I think in all my plays, but I always feel like I tap into, I don't know, the ether or whatever. But to me, you tap into other people's souls, or people that are talked to you, so to speak, in that way. And right. My mentor used to always say, when you do the work, it informs your life. And in doing so, because I'm a survivor of a trauma myself, it informs that aspect of it, about where you are in this thing of what is victim, what is perpetrator. Okay. And conformity, masculinity. And to me also, especially how, sadly enough, when I wrote this play, or even the trilogy in general, I never thought that the world would be like it is now, with the rise in fascism in this country and what's going on in Ukraine. all those visuals of those people that have been buried in mass graves. And we as Americans were watching this and rooting for this democracy, and it's a harsh reminder that if you really want democracy, blood will be shed. I mean, Pinochet is infamously for saying, because he always was a dictator, but he used the excuse of killing all those people, is that democracy must be bathed in blood, right? But in this character, Pinochet is more of the Putin character. And, you have all these other people more like the Ignacia character. But I just feel it's really kind of interesting because here we are after January 11th and an attempted coup just happened there. And, we just shrug it off, and then, we're watching it on TV and we're become spectators of democracy and not beacons of democracy. Which I think, but I mean, I didn't go in it like that. I went in with the characters because I go right from characters and it just started expanding and the universe started expanding, et cetera, et cetera. But it was really, to me, it was truly important to make these characters very, very gray.
Great, thank you. Lara, just gonna ask you a bit about, because you were one of the first to read the play for our company and bring it to our attention, and then thinking about what you think maybe the themes for you are in this play or ideas for you.
Yeah, all those years ago, like you said, it's like a whole lifetime ago now that like all of us core members took some different plays and we were reviewing a number of scripts and just determine, what might work for us now, then, and then in the future. And, a few of them were really compelling, others not so much. But when I read Atacama, I immediately it was easy, right? It was just breathtaking, just read it all down. And then I wanted to read it again. So I felt like I immediately had a vision of what it might look like and what it might feel like to be on stage with it, just very visceral. I'd say just one simple theme would be, as a mother myself, I could immediately identify with Ignacia. I could understand what that pain would be like to lose her child. And that story alone could have been an interesting, just a sad story of a mother's loss, but, Atacama is just so much more than that. And, I feel like there are some classic things, right? Like fall and redemption. Like these two characters are diametrically opposed politically. And I think the choices that they made led to the fall for each of them, the loss of their children. I think the story we see played out in Atacama is really a journey toward some kind of reconciliation. Ignacia is further down that road than Diego is, yet she still has a long road ahead of her. I think it's also grounded in this really interesting, really rich history of Chile, the backdrop. But it's not just a story about history. It's, I think, as it's already been alluded to, we can easily see the connections now. We didn't know that when we chose it, but I think it can fit, in any probably present day. But I think it's a powerful metaphor now for the present day about what can happen when we don't connect with each other. I think we have to see the other, air quotes, the other, as a person of value, someone who deserves our respect as a fellow human, even when you're diametrically opposed in your points of view. So I think the more you can see the human in the other, the more likely you are to value, accept, and hopefully respect their opinions and their experience to find that common ground. So I also think it's a story of choices, the choices that we make in the face of tragedy, and the subsequent impact of those choices on other people, and maybe whole groups of people, in this case countries, right? So in Atacama, there's this very powerful interaction between the two characters because they're comparing and contrasting, and they're sharing of experiences. And I think it was that engagement that I found so compelling when I first read the script. Again, there's no break for these two people, as Pedro and I have found out very, very well. There's no break. But when you're reading it too, you have to be very, very engaged with these two characters. There's no breath or no break. Like you are just in there with them, like every dirty, gritty, beautiful, transcendent moment. So I guess finally, another element I found very compelling was just that the work was in the genre of magic realism. That's where magic or fantasy kind of slips into that everyday life. Nobody questions it. It's just there. Like I've always admired the works of like Isabel Allende and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So to be engaged in a work of theater, I mean, I know those literary works, but to be engaged in a work of theater that is in that genre is both exciting and very, very rewarding. So, and of course, can't say too much more about the implications of magic realism in the story. We want everybody to see the play to experience it.
Great. Thank you so much, Lara. And the question I have for Pedro is your experience as the actor coming into this character, coming into the story. Any thoughts or comments about your experience or your perspective?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that, we don't get the chance as Latino artists to hear our stories that often, unfortunately, here in the Twin Cities. So, that's the first thing that attracted me. I think that it was a playlist that I saw. Hey, there's a play on Chile, and I'm like, oh, I want to at least show up and see what that is. And I knew a little bit about the Chilean, I knew a little bit about Pinochet and what happened. But I think it's a very interesting story, as Augusto is saying. And I don't say you keep saying January the 11th, but I think it's January 6th that you are referring to.
January 6th, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, when that thing happened, and it's like, oh my God, how timely it is for that kind of division of two peoples, right? Of two different ideologies and what that leads to. I know that in North America, I know that the French people that I talk to, and they always ask me in the artist community, well, what are you doing? I'm working on this play, and what is it about? And without giving up too much, right? You talk about Chile and you talk about the Pinochet regime, and they have no idea what that is, and how weird that is that it didn't happen that too long ago. Yet the history is kind of lost. So it's a very important story to be telling and to remind about, yeah, this is what happened, right? So that kind of thing is important to me, and the character of Diego is very, very challenging because, as Augusto said as well, there's that machismo thing, and when we talk about the people that we're looking for, the remains of these bodies were the women of Calama. They were no men of Calama. They were men nowhere to be
Right.
seen. So for this man to just take on that journey, it's a little bit of a realization of him too, that what that is, right? Why is he there? Why is he going into that journey now after all these years? And the character is challenging because of that magic realism too, and it's just peeling an onion that maybe at the first time that you saw or you see Diego, and towards the end, it's not the first time that we see him. It's not what he really is. So, I think that Rick and I had that discussion. So how much does he know, right? How much do we let on? How much of that onion gets peeled one at a time? Is it what he's saying is true? Or is he hiding something? Is he encouraging, and is he discovering something? And the answer to that is yes to all that. He finds out more through this journey that he has ever had. So he has a little bit of understanding of what happened to these people, what the journey of Ignacia is, and what he's finding out. Little by little, right? Without giving, like I said, too much. So by calling it a monster, now you've given up a lot of the stuff. But it is what it is, and is very as an actor, that's a challenge, right? That how much do I know? Because it's not a linear play. Is how much do you reveal? How much do you hide? Is he what he's saying is true? Is there something underneath that we don't know about? That's what the challenge to the audience and the actor is.
Great. Thank you so much. That was great. And both your perspective of the political sense of the play and how it applies to the life we're living now, but also the journey for you as an actor, understanding how to portray that character. Couple other questions for other people, just to prepare, give you like 2 seconds of preparation. Martha, any thoughts that you might have from you were one of the early supporters of this play in our company.
I'll just comment that I attended the play. I attended the rehearsal today, and I was talking to Rick about what a huge difference it was last week to this week, and the joy and sorrows of sitting there listening to the story, but to actually see it embodied right there. I've only heard a reading, then we did a streaming version of it, but to see Lara and Pedro out there, it was just powerful to see how much, what the story means if you have live actors out there doing it as a play. And it was the first time I'd gotten to see that. And so I just wanted to share that for me, that was a very powerful experience.
Great.
And I take my hat off to both of you. I know it's an incredibly challenging play.
Yeah.
I'm watching you and my heart's going out to you because it's so challenging. I also could see that you're totally on it and you're going to get there and it's going to be gorgeous. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Quincy, I'm going to pick you because you're a sound designer from another perspective of this production. Any thoughts, comments from your perspective?
Yeah, I remember when I found this just in the inbox of our email. It was one of our play submissions, and it was one of the ones that, like, much like Lara, I was really blown away with the script. There's so much to unpack, and it is just coming so much more to life seeing it in person. I came to the rehearsal yesterday and I really felt the impact of, like, this is something you need to see to feel the energy of the room and the people working on it. It's really powerful.
Great, thank you. And Gordon, you mentioned some things about your attending the original reading that we did. Even then, even without all the theater production qualities. Any thoughts, other comments?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier was simply the power of the language. It provokes, it evokes, it invokes. It's all of these evocation, invocation, provocation. And it felt so immersive for both, speaking, I think, for both me and my wife, that I felt not just a spectator, and this was just reading, and Lara and, the other gentleman, did such a powerful job in the reading. And we were just found ourselves overwhelmed by the experience. And I kept thinking, in the theater, typically I'm a spectator. But in this setting, with this play, I felt like a witness, which is a whole different kind of experience. And I began asking myself, what's my responsibility in all of this? And I think this is even more pertinent after January 6th. What is our responsibility and accountability as witnesses of what happened on that day? What is our responsibility and accountability as witnesses of what's going on in Ukraine and other hotspots around the world? And so it demanded for me a response to those questions. And I don't have an articulate response to it, except that it has provoked those kinds of questions for me. And I've thought about this from time to time since that reading, and I can't wait to see it embodied on stage. I mean, I found it overwhelming just listening to the language. to see it fully realized on stage is going to be a very different but incredibly exciting opportunity. So this whole issue about feeling like a witness and not quite knowing what to do with that is something that I've hung on to since that time. And, it was a rare experience. And I thank you all for that.
Wow, thank you so much, Gordon. So thank you all of our people present here discussing it. Are there any questions that you've seen in the chat, Peter, or I can comment a few things?
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Good. Go ahead, Augusto.
So, I mean, to come around what Laura was talking about, the metaphors. And so to me, it always struck me, it was really kind of amazing that you had these people digging down into the sand, into their past to kind of resolve their present moment. And at the same time, high above on the hill is this world famous observatory, the ALMA observatory, that's looking up into the sky, into the Big Bang, into our past, to try to resolve where we come from in the present moment. And that's such a beautiful metaphor to me, because these are people that are both discovering really in the same thing, except obviously something is much more personal than the other. In regards to, it's interesting about the rehearsals and the way I write and whatnot, because in the play, there's lots of pregnant pauses, because I write like in the scenes when I structured out, like, for example, if I write a scene about two people and it's about love, the last thing I talk about is love. Right. So I think in this season, there is a big, in the subtext, there's this big pool, this reservoir of things that are shaping things. Right. And a lot of the play, the movements of the play, it works in synonymous with the movements of two people in a room, right? So I was very fortunate, the COVID thing, to have lots of readings of different plays of mine. But the frustrating thing is that you're not getting those movements because these people are two separate locations. You can't feel that. So I think COVID really was like a reminder of how much of a human social, animals we are. Right, we need that aspect of it, and so I'm really excited to see this play, like, because it's been rehearsed with people living with each other and living with that, and I think that's the way and it's kind of interesting that a lot of people that only live through basically contact with other people is through the internet. Well, of course there's things of course it's gonna be things that are very, very different. Lots of translations. So.
Thank you. Yes. So is there any questions that you have picked up, Peter, or should?
No, although, I mean, I'm happy to raise a question myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that we recently at the Eastside Freedom Library have been working with people, particularly in the local Black community, who are working on the issue of reparations. And we've had a reparations reading group that has now met monthly for over 2 years. The St. Paul City Council has appointed a legislative advisory committee to propose what would be appropriate reparations. At the same time, we've also been working since we began 8 years ago with the Twin Cities Japanese American Citizens League. And recently we have brought together people from the Japanese American Citizens League with people from the Black community working on the issue of reparations. And I'm always looking for where is the general in the specific? How do we tease out? We need to respect the specific. And I think Augusto's point about the actual bodies in space, and we really need to look at who is Lara's character, who is Pedro's character, how do we see them interacting with each other. It is a Chilean story, but how are the issues in this story relevant to the concern for redress and reparations that the Japanese American community has organized around successfully, reparations and apology that the African American community is organizing around, and not just in St. Paul. So I wonder about, and I loved Gordon's point about the audience being transformed from spectators to witnesses. But how do we think about the issues in this play having a relevance beyond the Chilean story? How to all the injustices in the ways that we seek on a personal level, but also on a political level to seek justice?
Yeah, I think, I mean, just from my point of view as in some ways a representative of Full Circle Theater, the reason why we chose this play is because it has both that specific story to tell that needs to be told and hasn't been told often enough. As Pedro said, the stories of Latin America, in a sense, are not well known in North America. But also the reason why we chose is because, as Augusto and others are saying, it really applies to our own sort of crises of social organization, in a way, of how divided we are, and on multiple levels. One, on how divided we are, and is that going to have a consequence beyond what we can imagine right now? January 6th was, for us, I never thought I'd see that, in a sense, right? And then, so there's all of that. And then there's all of that when you bring up an issue like what happened with Pinochet in Chile. What are the concepts of reparations around it? The very reparations the Black community is now talking about, the very reparations that, as you say, the Japanese community campaigned for successfully. So all of those elements, I feel like, even though this event happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, it is relevant to us today. And it is a story that is going to help us, I hope, all of us, as Gordon says, to accept our role as now, not just audience members, but witnesses. And as witnesses, how does that impact how we behave and how we understand and operate in this society? So those are some of my.
Thank you. It looked like Augusto wanted to say something.
Yeah, but if you.
Yes, thank you.
Any others?
Oh, I mean, to me, it's especially these days, I think the only way that you can be able to is to be able to people to relate to these people that are suffering. I mean, what's happening in Ukraine happened in Syria. No one seemed to really care.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone loves refugees right now, but they didn't like the refugees when they were Syrian. I mean, I don't want to, because that's a whole other different conversation, but that can't be, that has to be, brought up at a later time, because, I think that if Ukrainians were brown, like Latino brown, would they be accepted like that? No, I don't think so. And I just say, so there, you can have a truth of this kind of murder that is happening, but again, it's not like someone goes, okay, that's obviously an example of pure evil, we're going to fight against it. No, there's still complications behind it. It's, are they happen to be Caucasian? It affects the way people see it and take it in, right? I mean, what was Stalin's thing about, what is it? One murder is a tragedy or something like that, and then a million is a statistic, right? And it's kind of like this along the lines here. It's I think it's just reminding people about, and when I'm saying about, like Atacama, I think a wrong way I've got to gone it, or a less interesting thing about it is to have made it preachy, to have made this a social message. Because I think that the best, I mean, whether it's from like Sanskrit to the scriptures or whatever, those are all stories, right? And so those will suck you in, and then that's when because it moved you, and then that's the way you learn the moral tale of it, right? It wasn't just like murder bad, right?
Yeah.
And I think, within this story, or if it's another story about, I don't know. I mean, if it's a story about an African-American woman grieving for their child, I think anyone will be able to relate to that pain and take that in and be moved by that. And then, you're hoping that they will be moved to try to correct those injustices. But, like anything else, because people are people, it's a crapshoot. But I think it's stronger to go. I think it's stronger to go in that way.
Mhm.
And convert people in that way than doing the social messaging thing. That's my thing about the whole Latinx thing. It's like, I use Latino and people say why, and I go, I use it for the same reason that Venezuelan Americans and Cuban Americans in Florida voted for the other guy, and Mexican Americans in El Paso voted for Biden, because we're not a monolith.
Mhm.
Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, that's like saying someone that's is calling an Irishman an Englishman. So we're all, and it's the same thing with the Asian community. I mean, I hear that all the time about people just throwing everyone into one kind of category. But I think the answer really is telling those, is telling stories that really challenge people's humanity. And like I said, it's a crapshoot. Is it will it convert like, all these people overnight? No. But I think great literature, I think Mark Twain, for example, has done more for showing about the injustice of slavery and whatnot, through his books than a lot of the straight just social messaging stuff, which I think sometimes falls in.
Yeah,
I think
thank
also
you.
too,
And
the
Pedro,
law-
yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the loss of life, it's a universal feeling. It's everybody's oppressed in every part of the country and stuff, and how people try to find justice and comfort on that loss. It's universal, and there's no replacing. When we talk about reparations, how do you replace the loss of your daughter, for example, or the love of a loved one? There's no justice. Once that happens, we can arrest the guy, we can put him in jail.
Right.
That doesn't bring your loved ones back. The loss is a loss, and
Right.
and you have to make peace with that. When I find in the piece of Atacama, why? Because I think it was like, why are this woman just going out there just to find a piece of what you lost? Because you're never gonna get it back.
Right.
But it's a way of honoring them, in the sense, because for looking for justice, yeah, we caught Pinochet, we cut his head off. I still lost my daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think also too, within what Pedro was talking about, within the Latino culture, it's a much more different relationship with death than I think Americans have with death. I mean, you have the day, the Day of the Dead with the Mexican religion and whatnot. And, I think Americans have, they're, and as an American, for sure, including myself, I think it's Americans in general have an unhealthy way of looking at the process of dying in general. That I think, at least like with these Chilean people, so most people would say, oh, that's really disgusting or gross that these women would collect, the jawbone of their son. But I mean, in a way, I think there's something kind of beautiful about it. I mean, because this is their way of getting closure.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Lara, you're shaking your head and some agreement. I'm just thinking, do you have any thoughts about?
Oh, no, I just was absolutely in agreement. And, Augusto's, right on. I think of that a lot. And it's one of the reasons why I love this genre so much. I've never done a piece of theater in this genre. I've only read books. And I've never read a play. I've never done a play, never done any kind of theater that has not just the magic realism, but has that, it has that Latina, it has the Dios de los Muertos, it has that health of, I'm going to agree with Augusto, that healthier relationship with the dead. And, we had ofrendas, for my father who passed away. And, we had we had a lot of that part of the culture that I lost when I, lost that piece, when I lost kind of contact with that part of my family, and I miss that. And this was for me personally, this was a nice it was opening the door, back to that again. And I feel like that is, it is going to maybe surprise some people. It maybe will give some people comfort.
Mhm.
I feel like there's a lot of comfort in that. And of course, without, talking about the ending of the play, there's just a beautiful amount of, there's just this beautiful this comfort at the end. And I feel like that's throughout, but particularly that there's this, it's not a redemption, the children are still lost. The things still happen. The atrocities are still what they are, like Pedro said, Pinochet is still, dead, and, really it didn't change the past. But just speaking from from Ignacia's point of view, well, and Diego's too, they both have this next level that they can get to. And I think that, I don't know, I think that is comforting. I feel like that is some hope. And so just to give this play, everything that it, all the accolades that it deserves. It's not just about the horrible atrocities, right? There's also, I won't say too much, but there's just this beauty of hope. And I really appreciate that, because it's not just, oh, we don't want I'm sure Augusto didn't think like, oh, I just don't want the audience to go away crying. I mean, it's also indicative, it's also a metaphor, right, for the hope when we lose somebody.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that hope, I think, is really an important part of the experience, and that comfort, as you say, because, in some ways people could feel like there's so much trauma in this, that the subject matter of this play, that you don't want to revisit that. But in a way, what you're talking about is within that trauma or around that trauma, there's also discomfort that this play can bring, and there's some kind of hope. And as you say, that recovery of something is important for these people, is important for these two characters, and is important for people in general. The recovery of some connection to the people you've lost, in a way, I think is really.
So on a lighter note, I'm really happy there's no intermission, so nobody can get away. They have to stay and see the beautiful ending.
Belts in the chairs.
Yeah, no, I've been to shows where people have thought it is so gory or is so heavy, they've left.
Heavy, yeah.
But I think also too, yes, I agree. But I think also too, there's a lot of humor in the play.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that I think are really funny. That's
right.
That I think they're funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And that's the way, because we're people in general. And I think that that shows how complex and how much they've really begun to, again, it's not Laura ideology versus Pedro ideology. It's, or Diego or Ignacia ideology. It's, Ignacia, the human being, and Diego, the human being. So to me, it was very necessary to show that side of themselves. I mean, I'm sure like Stalin had a great sense of humor.
A scary sense of humor.
Somebody loved that boy, right?
Yeah.
Either their mom or their kids or their neighbors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Hitler. I mean, what's scarier is like, that Hitler's killed over 6 million people, or that Hitler killed over 6 million people and was in love with a woman and had a dog he loved. I mean, I think that's scarier, really.
Any last comments or thoughts? I have a couple of things I'd like to mention about the production. Maybe
I just want to ask a sort of a more technical question.
Yes.
I'm curious, Lara, what is it like to be both directing and acting? How does that work for you?
Sorry, I couldn't get my mute off. Yeah, well, it's a pretty good answer. I have Rick.
We work together.
Yeah, it's a really good team. So what we figured is, yes, I found, yeah, I really wanted Full Circle to produce this play. And we just thought like, oh, hey, this is a great opportunity. I would love to we kind of take turns with our projects. And so I thought this would be a great pet project for me. And then, as it went and as it, evolved, and it seemed apparent that I was also going to play Ignacia, that we just decided that, yes, I can have the vision and we can talk about the production, and I've been involved in all of the meetings, like what is the set going to look like? And what are my opinions on the props? And, what's the lighting going to look like? And how about Quincy, how about those sound cues? How about that wind? And, just the kind of nitty gritty things like that. But then when it comes to the actual staging, the actual rehearsals, I mean, I'm not gonna, I have no possible way to be reflective of myself and what I'm doing, or of my dear friend Pedro. I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to let that be Rick. So or whoever it was going to be, Martha. And we obviously need extra eyes on, because when I'm standing in the scene being Ignacia, I can't also be watching all of the other things that I would typically be doing if I was just the director. So I guess I would say it has been in chunks. It's not really layered all at the same time, kind of pieced out.
Right. And also,
I love it.
As in the staging aspect of it, my work is to try to have that sort of integrate into her vision, so that all of the aspects of her vision she's talking about, is that the staging simply is a part of that. Rather than I'm staging one play and she's directing another play. That would be a problematic situation. I do want to just mention a few things about our production. One, it opens April 21st, and it runs for till May 1st. So there's actually only 9 performances. And so it's really going to be trying to get people to come and get word of mouth going right away. So this podcast, I think, is going to be important. Hopefully people will be watching it after the actual recording, the actual event. We do have several consultants on the production. And so one of them is Eva Palma Zuniga, who is a professor at the U of M and also a member of the Club Chileno on Minnesota. And so she's involved in bringing that organization to see this production. Marcela Lorca of 10,000 Things Theater is one of our consultants, and both Eva and Marcela are both Chilean, born and raised in Chile. So their experience and their perspectives are very important to us. We also involving Alberto Justiniano of Teatro del Pueblo, and he has really been very key to connecting us to other groups in the Latino community in the Twin Cities. And then also we are going to have some post-show discussions, so they'll be listed in our upcoming promotion. And for 3 of the performances, on the 21st, the 22nd, and the 30th, we are going to have music performed in the lobby of the theater from like before the actual show by Ina Yuka, which is a duet with Vladimir Guido and his mother, and they have a duet of and they perform Chilean folk songs and other Chilean music. So we really want to have that support and involvement and engagement of the Chilean community in this production. So, Martha.
I just wanted you to mention that Augusto is coming.
Augusto is coming. There he goes. There he is.
You actually meet him.
You can actually meet him. He's going to be coming here on the 20th, so he'll see the preview. He'll be there at opening on the 21st. He will be there for the post-show discussion after the performance on the 22nd. So if anybody wants to direct questions directly at him live at the theater, he will be there. And then he will be returning on the Sundays to LA. So yes, that's really important. And we hope people will come to greet him. I'm sure he'll be available to talk to people in the lobby, you know, before and after shows, performances. So all of that will be an exciting part of this production. Any other, we have 1 or 2 minutes left. Any other thoughts, comments? Going once?
Well, let me just say to wrap up that, you know, the mission of the East Side Freedom Library is to inspire solidarity, work for justice, and advocate for equity for all. We also believe that art and culture is the most powerful way to meet that mission. And it's very clear that a play like Atacama is an important step in that direction that we want to be moving in. We will be listing on our Facebook page and on our website how people can get tickets to see the show and when the post-show discussions will be. Augusto, when you come to town, if you have a little bit of time, come and visit us
Oh, yeah, of course.
at
Yeah, I'd love to.
the East Side
Yeah.
Freedom Library.
We'll bring him out
And-
there.
Yes,
definitely.
please. But it's inspiring to listen to all of you. And I'm hopeful that this little video that we've made tonight will reach people and become a vehicle to encourage people to come and see the play. And we look forward to many, many years of collaboration with Full Circle Theater and the wonderful work that you do. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the East Side Freedom Library. Wonderful work you're always doing. Bye-bye.
Stay well, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
See
you,
guys soon.
everyone.
See you guys soon.